Oh, whoo, we in in the left corner, we got brother New Atlantis. This is my dear brother. We connected on a podcast like a year ago, a year and a half ago, last summer, and we've now met in the physical reality. And yeah, this is a dear brother and teacher and inspiration of mine. And I know that this podcast is going to be juicy because this man is well researched in consciousness, in healing, in energy work, so many, like he's the guy that I've noted for the years that I've been into creating tensor tech and all of the tools. Like New Atlantis has just been a huge inspiration to me. So welcoming my brother here. Yeah, this is episode 19, I believe, and we're keeping it going. So, yeah, welcome in. And if you want to give a little bit of an introduction before we get flowing with the conversation.
Yeah, I'm so much gratitude for being here and man, connecting with you. It's profound. It's so interesting how social media, it's as much as we were like, oh, it's like it's all, it's mind control and it's this and it's that and it's separating us. It's really also been a beautiful catalyst on bringing us together. There's so much brothers and sisters that I've met through, through Instagram, through my IG that has just been profound. And it's a big thing for me it's been just a great outlet on sharing my passions, just studying the metaphysics and how that translates into, physical reality and and how we can apply it. So it's just been it's been a long journey. It's been a long journey just of studying and application and seeing how this stuff grounds down into reality, where it's so much more than just like, oh, I could post this, I could post that, or let me get this info, or do this video. It's really about bringing it into reality and seeing how this plays out in our everyday life. It was the one things that really pulled me on. We're talking about electromagnetism and Kundalini yoga and consciousness, and I'm like, how does all this is boil down into ground reality? So that's been a big part of my pages, has been able to take the science and the spirit and bring those two together, reconcile of masculine and feminine, of taking the analytical and the intuitive, and seeing what we could build out. So it's just been just a grand opportunity on connecting with the people and connecting on brother Moona's Magicka and all the other light beings out there. And it's we're bringing this to reality. It's one, you know one hand wash the other, each one teach one, and it's just a beautiful fractal of seeing eye and eye, seeing how we're each other's reflection, and the same, the graciousness that you bring, I'm bringing that as well right back at you, and it's all about servitude of the Most High. How can we serve? So I'm here to serve, baby. Let's dive into serving.
Truly, truly, bro. Wow. Okay, so I did like I it there's nowhere to start with you other than from my own heart. And
Mm,
that's like I just want to genuinely, out of curiosity for how we can be of greatest service, how we can heal ourselves,
mm,
how we can actually apply what we learn from what we research and then actually apply this knowledge and transmute it into wisdom, because there's a big difference between theoretically, knowing about sacred geometry or all of these crazy esoteric metaphysical concepts, but if you're still emotionally not in a good place, if you're still coming from the illusion of separation, then it doesn't actually matter what you know. You know what I mean? Like you got to
yeah.
embody it and you got to walk with it. And every moment we have to live by what we're teaching. We have to practice what we're preaching. And that is tough when you're preaching the highest information, that we have access to in this realm. And that's kind of, I feel like to me, the way that I see what you share is like it's of the most high. It's of it's of infinity, it's of freedom, it's of like metaphysics at its finest. So I guess I want to start with the question, what is Kundalini energy
Yeah.
to you? Because that's very important to understand.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your description of Kundalini energy.
Well, I mean, I couldn't imagine a better place to start
Okay.
because with Kundalini, this is we see the serpent, we see the snake, and then what does a snake do? A snake has these waves, right? And Walter Russell talks about everything is moving in waves, and he talks about how electricity is what forms this whole universe. And the more that I got into Kundalini, well, one, just to back it up, in the bridge that bridges that whole theoretical with the application. So I always come from a background just a complete hunger for knowledge since I was a little kid has been to understand the nature of this reality. What is this place? I'm in this body, like what is this human experience? And so through my life, it was always study, study, study. I would sit there with stacks of books and going through all of them, and one subject leads to the next. And then one day I was like walking by and I seen a sign. I was in New York, seeing a sign outside of Manhattan saying Kundalini Yoga, and I'm like, the word always popped up to me, Kundalini. Like there's just something about it. And then I took my first class, and my first Kundalini Yoga class was the very first time where I actually experienced all of the stuff I was studying about. It
Wow.
was literally the root that brought everything together. Where I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the things that I was like, working out in the mind so when we say like what is kundalini energy, this is the life force energy that pulls everything together. It's hard to trap it into a box on saying the definition like this is what kundalini
Totally.
is.
Totally.
And in the yogic science, they talk about it's this energy that's in the fourth vertebrae of the spine that powers your entire system. And you have the channels in the body. You have the three main channels, which is the Sushumna, the central channel. Then you have the Ida and the Pingala, which is the moon and the sun, the masculine and the feminine. And they spiral around that central channel, and then it goes into the brain, and it creates this circulatory closed circuit of electricity that's flowing. And anytime that you have an electrical current that flows, you have a magnetic field that's generated around it. So when you're diving into Kundalini, you're diving into the electrical energy that's powering your entire body and the field of magnetism that's produced. And so it's realizing that when we say electricity and magnetism, we're talking about magnetism is the field of information, and electricity is what powers that information, right? So it's like it's a representation of the polarity of masculine and feminine, of the subtle and the gross, of the theory and the application. So when it's applied to the body, this is if we look at a central channel and we look at the moon and the sun channel, the Ida and the Pingala, we're looking at a balance, right? We're looking at creating a balance of energy within the body. When you start to study the body, you realize, as well as the universe, you can learn about the entire universe through the body. It's all about balance. There's a reason if you split down the body down the center that you have a reflection going on. You got these two eyes, two nostrils, you got these two hands, feet. So you're seeing that there's this balance that's taking place. And so like Kundalini or Kundalini yoga and this whole energy is it's the manifestation of that. It's the energy that is able to power this entire system, of power your human body, power the universe, and it's the balance point. And you can really experience that firsthand. And the for me it's the epicenter of the experience is what they would call the samadhi, or that central point where the ego self disappears. It's the central node that pulls everything together, where everything exists simultaneously, that omnipresent, omnipotent. And when you look at like what that is in the mind logically, you're taking the two polarities and just bringing them together.
Mm.
So it's the experience of that is quote unquote what you would call the ego death, which is the ego exists to manifest as that separation, right? That illusion of that separation. So when you merge that and you merge the masculine, the feminine, you merge the logical and the intuitive, you create this wholeness. It's the whole essence of like holistic health. And we talk about all these individual units and when they come together to embody the central state. And what that does, energetically in your body and in your mind and your consciousness is that it brings you back to your center. We always talk about let me get balanced. Let me the path of the middle way. Let me get to that center. And that center is the balance of the polarity. And experiencing that firsthand allows you, it puts you back in the driver's seat. It merges the soul and the ego self. So it's not essentially you're not, destroying the ego. You need the ego to still maneuver through this realm,
Mhm.
right? But instead of the ego being in the driver's seat, the soul's in the driver's seat. And so the what happens is that you're able to have this beautiful balance of maintaining your personal self, your identity, right? That personality. And at the same time, you're balancing that with the omnipresent self, with the God consciousness. And it's that whole essence of the universe being God consciousness manifesting itself into physical form.
Mm.
And it's maintaining those two aspects, and so that's a long-winded answer, but essentially Kundalini is the experience of that. It's the experience of the merging of polarity and allowing that to be the driving force in your, in your life. And it's profound when you're experiencing it because then it brings some actual experience to just the theory that's in the mind and understanding all these metaphysical laws and stuff. So as like a rough breakdown of Kundalini.
Totally. Yeah, I resonate with all of that. Um, there was a question came up of like we use the word scalar energy and it in a sense like it like Kundalini is another name for the life force, the chi, the prana, the torsion. Um, what like is is that Kundalini energy and the scalar like they're one and the same thing, right? And that like even like I brought this here, obviously. This is a very simple form of would you say that the Kundalini is within the ring?
Yeah, it's definitely it's this is the key to what we see happening is that we have many different words, prana, kundalini, scalar. And essentially what are we talking about? We're talking about the energy that powers this whole thing, right? That powers all of this energy. If we look at a tensor ring, for example, we got a wire that's bent on itself, a closed circuit, and we're seeing a spiral happen. We're seeing that you have this twisting that's happening. The same way with the Kundalini energy, how there's this spiral that's happening. When we talk about scalar, we're talking about the quantum field. We're talking about the field of energy that is omnipresent and omnipotent. It's not linear. It doesn't go from point A to point B. It's the energy that taps into everything. And that goes into, again, the polarity. When the polarity bridges, the same way how you have those wires when they're wrapped together and they're connected, when that polarity comes together to that central that node point is what is the center that pulls all this together. Because if there is no separation, then we're talking about an omnipresent field. So it's dealing with the same energy. Whether we're dealing with the Kundalini in the body, we're dealing with tensor rings. We're dealing with the energy that powers everything, and it's creating a balancing effect. And what is balance? Balance is harmony, it's coherency.
Mm.
And that's what we realize with the tools is that what are they doing? They are bringing a balance, a coherent state where you're able to have this ebb and this flow, this compression, this expansion, electricity and magnetism, positive charge, negative charge, North Pole, South Pole, and you're allowing those to flux. You're allowing them to breathe. And when you have that balance happening, when you're having that symmetry, that harmony take place, this is what you experience as healing. This is what you experience as energy almost acting like a tuning fork where
Mm,
it's able to create a coherent state. That was one of my, big discoveries, or I would say big aha moments was, for me, all this started with orgonite, and
mm,
orgonite coming from Orgon and Wilhelm Reich. And he's breaking down energy as POR and DOR, positive orgon, negative orgon. Later, I realized he's talking about negative ions and positive ions.
mm,
And that's that ebb and flow again of the polarity. So yeah, it's to answer your question, it's dealing with that exact energy, and scientifically we'll call it longitudinal wave, or we'll call it scalar, and it's the energy of polarity that binds together the physical universe with the consciousness.
mm.
Good way to look at it.
This is a question of mine. Does a torus have a polarity? Like, because it's simultaneously we are the unmanifest beingness, and
Mhm.
that we're also experiencing like like I I am a manifestation. We are a manifestation of this divine energy, of this life force, the God force. Um, but even if like does we're basically like dissolving the polarity, right? Within, say, just a ring as an example. And but is there still a polarity here? Or is like because the torus is come going out and then coming in, does it still have like a positive and a negative end? Or like what exactly is the torus field? And if you want to go real deep into your understanding of what the torus field is and like in all of its aspects.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love anything tourist. I'm just like, yes, let's dive in. So you're looking at the tourist field and you see those lines, right? You see the lines that are crossing over each other. Whatever angle you can look at it, because you can look at it from the top down and you'll see that little lotus pattern. You
Hmm.
can look at it from the sides and all the different angles. You're seeing these lines, and what you're witnessing is converging and diverging, right? So you're witnessing lines of converging and diverging, which is inhale, exhale, exactly, compression and expansion. Now, if you'll notice with those lines where they interconnect, let's say if it's the center point of the X that's balancing that polarity, what you are witnessing is yes, the torus field is working with polarity, is polarized, but it's polarized in a sense where it's constantly in flux. It is constantly in flux, and within that torus field, you're having the whole aspect of, if we look at the anatomy of it, when we talk about the center point, so the exact center of the torus field is what you call dielectricity or the dielectric point. It's what they used to call the black sun, right? And that's the center node that connects. If you could imagine it, just for the brain's, for the brain's ability to wrap itself around this. If you just imagine nodes as quote unquote particles, and all those particles are interconnected, like the whole entanglement theory. So the center node is the dielectricity. And then within that dielectricity, you have the second thing that's born is magnetism, the field of magnetism.
Mm,
So this magnetic field that's around the torus field, when we talk about converging and diverging, it's these lines or these field lines that we would see with the magnetic field that are both compressing and expanding. They're compressing and expanding. So if you imagine a spectrum of pressure and tension, so this tension is going to have two things happen. It's going to have an outside pressure that's going on, and it's going to have an inward suction. So what you begin to witness is these lines of converging and diverging. When the pressure happens, that creates friction. It creates a what's the word? abrasion. And with abrasion, you get electrification. So if you look at the torus field as a dance of a magnetic fields that's having these lines of conversion and diverging, when it's creating this friction, it's creating electricity.
Mm,
And electricity is represented as the force that breaks matter down. And it becomes to be a dance between electricity and magnetism on that spectrum. So as it leans more towards magnetism, an inward suction begins to happen, pulling in towards that center node. It's this gentleman, I always butcher his name, Kitcher. He was from the 1600s, and he talked about how magnetism is the same force that is the magnetic pull from a magnet pulling steel or pulling lead to a magnet is the same force that pulls man to God. And
mm,
so what we're talking about is like Walter Russell breaks down is that there's this inward suction that happens with magnetism as it leans more towards magnetism going towards the center. And then as it leaves the center and is going out, an outward pressure begins to happen. That's electricity. So magnetism, as it goes towards the center, is creating centripetal flow. It's allowing growth to happen. Imagine it just like water, whereas water begins to cool and it becomes solid, it becomes ice. So the same thing's working with magnetism. As it becomes this inward suction, it's cooling, it's going into cold, and it's creating this crystallization, it's crystallizing matter, it's going to the center. And then electricity, as it goes from electricity and then it's going out, having that outward pressure, that abrasion, that electrification, now we got heat. And that heat begins to break matter down. And so what we're witnessing is a dance of cold and heat.
mm,
Either as heat, what's happening with the water? Now it's expanding, it's becoming air. It's breaking down the molecular structure, becoming air. As it cools, it's going from air and then it's condensing back down into solid. So it's the force. The torus is literally the force that allows energy to become matter and matter to become energy.
mm,
And it's dancing between cooling and heating, and it's this dance of electricity and magnetism. So the polarity is playing out there, but where the polarity ceased is at that dielectric center, that point that powers the entire torus field. And essentially, when you look at the torus is a true atomic model that we look at physics. Modern day, if you open up any of your physics books, they'll talk about electrons as these like little buckyballs, these little, balls that are floating around. And that's, if you look at the deeper science, it's not at all what's happening. Is that essentially a torus is the true atomic field around the nucleus, which would be the dielectric center, and it's perturbations in the ether. So it's pressure waves within the ether itself. And so it's again, we're working with the ether as the field, and these pressure waves are what's working on a spectrum. So as is dancing between pressure, outward pressure, and inward suction, what happens is that just like a guitar string, and the tighter you make a string, you're going to get a certain tone.
mm.
So this is what's happening with the torus field, and those tones are represented or they're a representative of calcium, gold, zinc, iron. They build out the entire periodic table of elements. That essentially the periodic table of elements is just one energy that differentiates itself on tone, on
Wow.
pressure, right? And so that's how this torus field is creating the periodic table of elements, which are the building blocks of matter. And
Wow.
all this is happening between masculine and feminine, heating and cooling, ebbing and flowing, inhaling and exhaling.
Wow, bro. That's cool. So it's
So
like
it's like,
it's like music. Like
yes, exactly.
we live in a symphony of scalar
Yep.
energy, and
Hmm.
it's like there we live in a infinite musical. We
Exactly.
live in a musical. Wow.
That's it.
Okay.
Cymatics.
Okay, so yeah, wow, cymatics too. Okay. So let me just get this question out of the way. I'm taking notes now because
I love it.
um so I like to get into like the real juicy stuff as I brought up before we started in the sense of like the solution. I want to be able to be a channel of consciousness for offering our brothers and our sisters in the highest way a solution to their dilemmas in life, or the blocks or the challenges and the catalysts. Like I genuinely want to grow so deeply in myself, and I want to grow together with each other. And that's how we're creating this new consciousness on earth, is we individually have to heal. We have to ascend our consciousness and embody this this like natural state of being. But just to ask you, like, if you were to offer like the most important, and I know this might change for you, but right now, in this now, what is the most important thing to be focused on with healing, um and and to actually like expanding our consciousness, whether it's like for the body, for the mind, or for the spirit, or maybe you can touch on all three of those aspects of our being. I'm aware that we have all these different bodies, and this physical body is just our most like dense form. But what would you offer out to the community as like, what is the most important thing you have to understand if you're really trying to grow and to heal yourself and to live in this rich, radiant state that we know we all can live in?
Oh, I love the question. I love it. I love it. You know, the first thing that comes to my mind is the first Hermetic law, which is the law of mentalism,
Mm,
that the human mind is a representation of God's mind, that there's this universal mind and then there's your mind. If you look at all the dilemmas of the world, like when you really dive deep into it, the one common denominator that you always come across is mind control. From the music to the entertainment, everything is trying to control your mind on what you think. It's all about what you believe and what you believe is possible. If you look at, like, you go back in the 60s and the 70s, you got the hippies and they're like having all these awakening moments, and then they build these communes, and then they bring Babylon with them into the commune in the mental state, right? It's
mm,
what we think. We see a lot of this happening with holistic medicine, where we're applying the same stuff that we pull from allopathic medicine because it's all that we know, and we apply it to holistic. We're like, oh, there's these supplements and these biohacking, these devices, and all this stuff that's outside of you that you pull in order to get, quote unquote, the healing. And if you rewind back and you go to the one thing that we could all understand, is that we were all brought here with a man and woman that comes together, and is, you have polarity that comes together to bring that brings that singularity. You come into this world, we all come into this world where it's us and it's our mind, and we're experiencing and we're pulling in reality as we know it. Then you tie this into the placebo effect,
mm,
that what you believe can literally change molecules, can change the molecular structure. So you have two people that take a pill, one's a sugar pill, the other's the actual, the true, whatever, the medication. And this person that just took the sugar pill can actually experience the molecular change in their chemistry. That's it. Yep. You can experience a change in chemistry and in your physics just by what you believe. So now you're starting to realize that you really don't need anything that is outside of you. That the whole reason why everything is about mind control is because it's designed to control what you think about and what you think is possible in reality. And what you think is possible in reality crystallizes it and makes it so. So you begin to realize that this is really about a system of taking your power back and realizing that two main concepts: that you are connected with everything, that there is no separation, that you are connected with everything. And that if you go back to what all the teachers talk about, they always say that all is God. That in the beginning, if there was just God, God's got nothing to work with but God. Energy's got nothing to work with but energy. So essentially it's split off and it's all these individual parts, but it's all the one energy. And once you realize that, and you realize that the mind, the body, the spirit, this holy trinity that's taken place, that it's all one energy that connects everything. And if you realize that it's all energy that connects everything, that essentially you do not need anything that is outside of you. That once you, if the goal is to bridge polarity and you look at the human being and we're looking at all these aspects of us, we have our mind, what we think about, our thoughts, and we have our heart, what we feel about. A lot of times there's a disconnect. Like we could be thinking some way and then we're feeling a different way. And then between the thoughts and the feelings, you got to have three because you got to have a holy trinity. You're going to have action. So this goes into the whole aspect of how you're acting, how you approach and show up to the world, your thoughts, how you're thinking about the world, and your feelings, how you're feeling about the world. And so when those are then when there's a dissonance between them, that means that there is not a synchronization that's happening between what you're thinking about, what you're feeling about, and how you're acting. And so once you begin to take your power back and come to that central self, and you're allowing all this trinity, these triunes of being take place, and you're allowing them come back into balance, well, essentially, you can approach every single day in that power. You can approach every single day in that love where you're aware of your thoughts, you're aware of your emotions, and you're aware of how you're acting into this world. That's why it's important not to go through the world lying and cheating and conniving because you're only lying and cheating, conniving with yourself, and that creates dissonance. And now you're going to have dissonance play out in your life. And it also solves the dilemma of like, oh, the Illuminati, they're running the world and they got all these things going on. And oh, little old me. It's like, nah, you can throw all that out the window because all that is just exists. Like, there's a reason why we have access to this information. It just wants you to be in fear and really give your power away to other structures. And the moment that you take your power back and you realize that you can continually, if you look at all the stuff, they got all these biohacks, all these supplements. So all you need to do is go outside, put your feet onto the soil, ground down, look, sun gaze, pull into those ions, do it using your breath. It's like you can go through it. You don't even here's a this is why I obsess with people. You don't even need the most organic food and the greatest food in the world. You don't need the greatest anything. You can literally transmute fluoridated water. What do you think about that? You could literally transmute and alchemize anything with your mind, with your consciousness. And that's what you begin to realize because the same way how we talk about the tensor ring can do it, the orgonite can do it. Well, they're working with piezoelectricity. Your bones are piezoelectric. Your fascia's piezoelectric. They're working with magnetite because it's paramagnetic. You got magnetite in your brain. It's paramagnetic. So they're looking at that structured water. Structured water naturally repels EMF. You have structured water in your blood. So it's like, so then you begin to realize, like, oh wow, I am the orgonite, I am the tensor ring. And these tools are gateways. These tools show us what's possible and allows us to come back into our resonance. And once we're back into our resonance, then we realize that we really don't need anything that is outside of us. That we could just connecting with the Mother Earth every day and Father Sky every day, we bridge those polarities and we can just create beauty in our life. And it's as simple as that because we got to go back to the ancestors. They didn't have all these high-tech gadgets and stuff like that. And then it solves also the dilemma of how come you can have people that are like carnivore diet, vegan diet, this diet, that diet, all these different stuff, and it's working for all these different people. It don't make sense. And if you got EMFs everywhere, how come there's still people thriving regardless of the EMF? So now you realize, like, oh, wait a minute, this is really about belief system. This is really about coming back into harmony, coherency, my connection with Creator, knowing that there is no separation. And then you can really, carve out your day every 24 hours like that from the minute that you wake up. And if you get unbalanced, you know the tools within your own body that you can use to bring yourself back into balance. So that would be my big thing. I would want to get out to the people that this is the biggest evolution that I've realized. It's like you go through all these stages and then you come to an understanding where you're like, wow, I'm enough. I am enough. I'm centered. I am balanced. I am whole, and it's a beautiful understanding of being able to kind of direct your life. You know, once you realize that, it's like the sky's the limit.
I don't I don't know what to say. I'm just I'm floored at the resonance of that message. It's exactly what I feel and exactly what has been hitting deep in my heart. And I've been deep into studying Dr. Joe Dispenza
Mhm.
and doing his meditations daily and really like doing the work that is being asked of me now. And yeah, like this morning I was studying Neville Goddard, which is all about how imagination creates reality, period.
Mhm.
End of story. What you think, what you feel, and how you act is your personality, which is creating your personal reality, which is
Mhm.
broadcasting out that electromagnetic signature into the musical field, putting out those specific tones, vibrations, and frequencies. And those, by the law of resonance, is
Mhm.
exactly what you create in your life. And
Yep.
it's so wild to, like, bro, something happened to me this morning that was just absolute magic. Like
Mhm.
absolute magical manifestation in its in the highest form. And so I'm going to tell that story real quick. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting and I'm studying Neville Goddard all morning, right? And I'm making notes and reading this book, great book, The Power of Awareness. And I'm reading about things that I already know, and that every single teacher, whether it's Dr. Joe or Neville, or there's a great another brother, RJ, who healed himself from chest down paralysis, who was
Mhm.
told he had like a day to live, and he's like, no, I'm walking out of the hospital in 100 days. I do not care what anybody says. This is what, and so he woke up out of emergency life-saving surgery because he had sepsis. And then he woke up in a state of cosmic consciousness and remembered how we heal ourselves. And
Mhm.
it's exactly what Dr. Joe teaches. It's exactly what Neville Goddard teaches. It's the exact same teaching, which is literally to change. Like, I thought the new earth is a new thought, it's a new potential. All it is a thought. And that's how powerful thoughts are.
Mhm.
Like when you act upon it, you are literally shaping the whole cosmos by acting upon your thoughts. So that's how powerful thoughts are. And so anyways, I'm chilling this morning. I'm studying. I woke up and I'm just kind of that was like a few hours. And then I had this feeling in me to basically, like, I want a new job. I want to make more money. I want to have more abundance financially in my life. So I pull out Think and Grow Rich and I'm
Mhm.
reading it and I'm walking and I like walking and reading. So I went for a walk and then I have a skill in tiling. I've done tiling, like trade work before in the past, and it makes a lot of money. And now I'm living in this new home and like Moona's is making me enough
Mhm.
to, but I'm open to higher amounts of abundance. So basically, I'm walking and I took another way to this store that I always like 100% of the time walk the same way. And I decided to go left. And immediately when I went left, I noted in my consciousness that, oh, I'm creating a new pattern, a new neural pathway in
Mhm.
my cosmic mind. So I went left and I'm almost at the health food store. I'm just like getting some fruit. And I look right and I see this store I've never seen before. And it was a flooring, it was called XL Restoration Flooring and Environmental. So I went in and I saw tiles in the display. So I went into the store and the door was locked. So I'm like, okay, cool. I guess I'll just reach out to people. And I walked to the health food store and then I walked back and I took the same way, which is also what I never do.
Mhm.
And this man is like, "Hey, come over here." and he called me in and he's like, "Hey man, I saw that you tried to like get into the store earlier. Like, are you curious about something?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I just moved to this new I moved to Gibson's from Toronto and like I'm looking for connecting with some guys that are in like the tile backsplash business." And I'm like, "I'm interested in some work." And then he's like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. Like, I can get you some work. Like, I'll just shoot me a text." He gave me his card. And just like that, like, it was effortless
Mm.
manifestation. But what I'm saying is, I created that. Like, I created it with my mind.
Yeah.
And when we realize we create everything with our mind, like, the
Mhm.
mind is everything, it's every thought. And I'm just in total resonance with you and with this is the truth. The Christ, like as Neville says, like the Christ is our own imagination
Mhm.
because like our body is our mind. As you're saying, like Dr. Joe also says, like the brain is an apothecary. You can literally like chemically produce every single substance just by thought alone.
Mhm.
It's a fact that he's studying and getting the research and like even feeling gratitude for 45 minutes a day. He did a study in 2016 at one of his retreats in Washington, and he had the participants feeling gratitude for 45 minutes, and they raised their immunoglobulin by 50%. And
Wow.
that's better than any flu shot that you'll ever
Wow.
gonna get just by feeling grateful. So what if you let your whole day, what if you lived in gratitude? Like what is that doing to your biology? Like what is right? Like it's incredible the power of our imagination. And as you're saying that we need to get it in synchronicity, the heart-brain coherence, that needs to be acting together. Those waves need to be flowing together because if we have an incoherent signal in our brain, right? And or either or then it's not going to be matching up. So we need to get these in sync and how we do that is meditation. And that's my next question for you is like I want to talk about the power of meditation by itself and what is meditation? And meditation is like just beyond sitting. Like meditation is it's life itself. Like everything is a meditation. You never leave meditation because
Mhm.
if you just go meditate, right? Like, so I just would love to give you the space to talk about meditation and maybe your experience with it and how important it is to have that understanding of this all-encompassing idea that we talk about mindfulness and meditation, but like this to me is a no-brainer, the most important teachings to understand in one's life in order for happiness, in order
Yeah.
for wholeness, in order for a healthy relationship, a healthy body. Like there's nothing more important than this. So go ahead, please share about meditation, and then we'll continue from there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was just beautiful. That was beautiful, everything you just said. It's, when you tap into this whole aspect of meditation, right? And you said something very key is that every day's meditation is not just simply sitting silent, eyes closed, and just seeing if you could watch your thoughts. It's so much deeper. If you, again you rewind back and you go to that polarity where you got the polarity happening, and you want to bring a stillness, or you want to bring a centering, a balance point between that polarity that goes into awareness. So if you quote unquote you say a walking meditation and this whole concept of being able to observe your reality without judging, a good way to see that is if you just really realize what a miracle this is of being alive and being in this earth and in this body, and you just observe as you, let's say you're walking down the street and you're just observing and you're just examining the plants. You're looking at the plants and the street and the people and the cars and you're just examining everything, that there's this beautiful process come on. What's really happening? What's really happening is that you're just centered, you're balanced. You're tapping into that tone that's allowing the heart and the mind to come into balance, to come into coherency. So I always look at meditation as recalibration, is that we tend to get so caught up in our thoughts and we're thinking about the future and the past and we're going all over the place, and we create all these dissonances because we have all these voices going on, and we are negative mind or positive mind, and we want to bring all that to a neutrality. And so the whole essence for me of meditation is being able to recalibrate the mind, recalibrate your soul, bring yourself back to that centered awareness, like, oh wow, I'm spirit having a human experience. And if this whole thing, we go back to mentalism, the world is mental, this whole thing is a thought experiment. If you look at all, if you study all the greats, all the yogis, all the masters, they all say the same thing: is one, you're creating this through your mind, and two, this is God that created the entire universe through the mind, through the thought. And it's so the meditation is bringing yourself back to that coherent state, back to that centered state where you're not allowing the mind to lead your focus. You're using your willpower, that fire within you, that force where you like, I'm going to, regardless of what my mind says, I'm going to get up and do this. So that's the difference of like the willpower and the mind. And the willpower is coming from the soul, because the will is the fire, and the fire is that's that intermediary between you and the spirit realm, right? Is that's what the whole essence of that element is. So when you're meditating, you're in a meditative state, whether you're doing a walking meditation, whether you're breathing, your eyes are closed, or your eyes are open at the third eye point, whatever that you're doing, essentially what you want to do is that you're bringing all of your awareness, which is all of those individual parts, and you're bringing them to a centered focus. It's like you're creating a laser beam, essentially. And it's just like a tuning fork. When you hit that fork and you're hitting that tune, you're creating that resonance. You're creating it's almost like a beacon. When you bring yourself into a centered state of awareness, you're allowing all those individual parts to come back into coherency, to come back into balance. Because again, you're merging the thoughts, that awareness, and you're using the willpower, the fire, which is again, that's the consciousness, but that's also using the personality, the ego self. So you're allowing those two to merge. And when they merge, again, you're bringing yourself to that singularity. That singularity is the node that connects all the other nodes, connects all the other individual points of the universe. So that's where it's like, this stuff is just physics. Again, go back to the tuning. Resonance is going to resonate. If you have two tuning forks and they're separated, they're not connected by wires or anything, and one can vibrate and it's going to cause that other one to vibrate. Or if you hit a gong and it's tuned to another gong on the other side of the room, they're both going to tune. So when you come into that recalibration, you come into that tuned state, that centered point, that centered node, it allows all those other aspects of the physical reality to merge to you. So that when you're walking down the street, you're going to experience synchronicity because you are in sync. You are in sync with the feelings and with the thoughts. And as you're going, you're in that centered state. And that's what's going to allow that reverberation to take place in people, places, and things that are going to appear in your life. I love the whole concept of like with quantum physics, where it's like, you know, the observer effect. If you're not looking at something, does it exist?
Mm.
If I'm like inside this room right now, and outside of the room are infinite amounts of possibilities and probabilities. And if I recalibrate myself, I come back to that centered awareness, back to that centered node, essentially I can change the reverberations that's around me. And then when I go out on my day to day, almost like this is a dream, you're going to experience symbology. You're going to see a sign, or, I love how you said, I'm physically going down a new route, and that is pulling a new route in my brain, a new mental pathway. And you can really see like, wow, this is all interconnected. So yeah, that would be what I would say is for me is meditation. It's a way of recalibrating the mind, the body, the spirit through a sense of awareness, bringing yourself back to presence, back to that present moment.
Mm. Thank you, brother. Yeah, let's continue. So it's interesting I want to talk to you about breathing up the spine from your root and locking your root. And that's one of the breaths that Dr. Joe teaches, which is like obviously a pretty intense activating breath, but we have so much energy in our lower three centers.
Mhm.
And like for a lot of beings, they find it hard to raise that into the heart. And once it hits the heart, it's just boom, because once you hit the heart, you're at the crown. Like you're at the you're right, you're at the unity point, which the heart. So how like what is your understanding? I maybe talk about like piezoelectricity and squeezing and like what is happening in that moment when people are having these like crazy Kundalini experiences just by like pulling up and like intentionally raising that energy. What exactly is happening there when it like we have so all that stored energy gets released? It's this like almost ecstatic thing. And how does that relate to everything else that we've talked about so far?
Oh man, yeah, your questions are fire. I love this. I love this.
Bro, we're just getting started.
Oh my God.
I can't even I don't even know where to go with you, man.
It's so you hit on just there's three parts that stood out to me. One of the chakra system, the lower chakra going into the heart. Two, piezoelectricity,
In the body.
right? In the body.
Maybe talk more about that. Yeah, like the squeeze. Yeah.
Love it. So we say the term, piezoelectricity all the time, or
Right.
piezoelectricity, however the hell you
Throw it
pronounce it.
around. Yeah, yeah.
Right? We say it all the time. Well, what is it? Right? Well, essentially, you create a squeeze, and you have positive and negative charge, and they separate. So all the electrons and the protons, they separate. All the negative and positive charges, they separate and create like a battery. And so now you have a positive charge and you have a negative charge. And so why is it that we use quartz as piezoelectric and we use it in mechanical devices and watches and all these different electronics? Is because when you separate the positive and negative charge, what you're creating is a mountain and a valley. So, what that is that when you have a positive and negative charge, imagine a positive charge as expanding outward and a negative charge as compressing inward. So when we talk about electricity and creating a piezoelectric effect, is that mountain, the top of that mountain would be the plus, would be the positive charge. The valley would be the negative charge. Energy is always going to travel towards the negative. It's always going towards the center. Same way when we talk about the torus field and expanding out and compressing inward, is that if you imagine negative charge as minus, subtracting, and you positive charge as plus, as adding, what you're creating is a flow or a pathway of energy to flow. Versus if there's no piezoelectricity, the energy can be scattered. So as soon as you're creating a squeezing, you're activating piezoelectricity, you're allowing a column or a central channel that allows the energy, just like a magnet, to be attracted to that negative point, to be pulled in. So now energy can flow. We talked about the root chakra, or squeeze on the perineum and squeezing on the root and bringing the energy up. So with Kundalini Yoga, we break the chakras down as a lower triangle and an upper triangle, right? So the lower triangle will be the first three chakras that is actually mostly activated in people, which is the root, the survival instinct, is the sacral chakra, that's sexuality, creativity, and is the navel chakra, the solar plexus. Exactly. Physical representation of that. So that's a lower triangle that connects you down to the earth. And then you have an upper triangle that connects you to the heavens, the three upper chakras. If you look at the heart, the anahata, and you look at the symbol of the heart on the anahata chakra, that's exactly the pattern that you get, is that you get that star. What we say is most commonly the Star of David, is that you have the merging of the bottom triangle and the upper triangle that merge in the heart center. So if you're looking at that lower triangle as dense, connecting to earth, and then you look at the upper triangle connecting to the heavens, connecting to the ether, is that when you bring them together, you're literally bringing heaven to earth. And what's the balance point between the upper and the lower triangle is the heart. The heart center is the balance point. So when you create this piezoelectricity, you're using this squeeze that's happening. You're allowing a pathway of energy to flow. So you're allowing the positive and negative charges to separate, just like a battery. And then what you're doing is that you're taking those dense energies and you're allowing them to push upwards against gravity into the heart center. And then you're pulling down from the ethers, from heaven through the crown and bridging that into the heart. And so again, what we're witnessing is two polarities that are opposite poles that are coming down together to balance. So when you're working with the energy center and you're working with being able to bring this balanced state, you're working with a state of coherency. So when you're squeezing on the perineum and you're pulling that energy up, you're activating and going into this is the whole dynamics of like torus field, electricity, and magnetism, because you have electricity, you have magnetism, and then you have gravity. This is where things get really interesting, because what are we doing? We're going against gravity. We're bringing the energy and going against gravity. And gravity is a dance between high pressure and low pressure. High pressure and low pressure is the forming of the torus field, that you have the low pressure at the top and the bottom, then you have the high pressure that's around that field of magnetism. And this to get super deep, this is what ties in the whole aspect of consciousness, 0 point consciousness, and 0 point technology. And you start to talk about UFOs, electromagnetic gravitics, how they were able to levitate, yogis levitating, creating UFOs that levitate, working with electricity and magnetism, is that you're creating a balance of heaven and earth, and you're pushing against the low pressure and high pressure, and you're allowing yourself to move against gravity, which is moving against the resistance. And as you push and you move against resistance, you bring that energy up, you're allowing that willpower to move against the force that is holding it back. So this is going to get, I hope I don't lose anybody here. So imagine the universe like it's elastic and it's being held together, right? It's being held together. And if you pull it apart, it's going to snap back together. That's what electricity is. Electricity is what binds together the molecules and the atoms and pulls the whole thing together. And this is held together in the field of magnetism. And so what is magnetism? Magnetism is North Pole and South Pole, which is compression and expansion. So whenever those two, North Pole and South Pole, when they get off balance, you have an electrical current that flows. So it's the same thing of that mountain and that valley, that piezoelectricity. You're creating that off balance, allows that energy to pull together, to snap back together. So imagine the snapping together is the resistance. And when you're pulling apart, what are you doing? You're generating energy. You're generating energy both on the expansion and on the compression. So if you're looking at expansion and compression, you're pushing against pressure. So this is why you're creating that pressure in that perineum, and you're pushing against gravity, and you're bringing all that energy up as you're moving against the elasticity that holds together the entire universe. And so that's generating that Kundalini energy, that massive amount of energy in the body. And all the energy, it needs to flow through something. So it's flowing through the nerves in the body. And the nerves, you imagine them just like electrical wiring. And so if you're going to take an electrical device and you plug it into the wall, if there's too much current in that device, you can blow out the circuits. So the nervous system is what's holding all of that current. We say things all the time, person is getting on my nerves, having a nervous breakdown. It's because the nerves can't handle the higher amounts of influx of energy, of electrical energy that you're getting with that piezoelectricity and that pressure. You're building up a high amount of energy. You want to make sure that the nerves are able to process that energy. And what happens when more electrical energy is able to be processed through your nerves? Well, just pure physics, pure electrical engineering is that the higher the current, the stronger the magnetic fields. So this magnetic field, what is it doing? It's attracting and it's repelling. So it goes into the field of magnetism that's around your body, that's repelling energy and situations away from you, and that's attracting energy and situations to you. So now you're seeing how this whole you're meditating, you're using that perineum, that piezoelectricity, you're moving the energy up, how you're able to create this balance, this coherency with electricity and magnetism that it affects as your nerves are able to handle higher amounts of energy, as your body's able to handle higher amounts of energy, your ability to affect reality increases. Not because it's woo woo mumbo jumbo, just because it's just pure physics. That's what I tell people all the time. We just dealing with physics, baby. It's just science, it's just physics and mathematics.
Add the word meta just for like the sake of the magical aspect, but
Exactly.
all of this is physics. Like, if you want to add that flair of like seeing fairies in the forest when you walk and have that magic in your life, but this is like mathematical physics.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly.
spirituality is like a mathematical thing in
Mm-hmm.
the sense of like the laws. It's like this is math in a
Exactly.
lot of it, right? Yeah.
It, it is because we're dealing with plus and minus. We're dealing with subtraction, addition. We're dealing with compression, expansion, and then that is you have a spectrum again between compression and expansion, masculine and feminine. That spectrum of inward suction and outward pressure is what we call the electromagnetic spectrum that produces everything that we could smell, taste, see, feel, which are the five senses, tying into the five elements, and it ties into a whole experience. That this is really about, again, a dance of polarity, finding the balance, which is the singularity between that polarity. Singularity, polarity gives us the trinity. And from that trinity, we get the five elements, which is 1, 2, 3, 5, which is the Fibonacci sequence that builds all of nature. Right? And all of that energy spiraling, which is the phi ratio, the golden mean. So we literally got the whole physics of nature, playing out in our own body, our mind, and we always come to those factors as always these threes that are always working around, and we're balancing them, balancing our thoughts, our emotions with our actions. We're balancing electricity, magnetism, and gravity, and we're protons, electrons, neutrons, man, woman that creates child. And it's no matter where you look, it's a fractal, and you keep finding that at every single angle, no matter where you approach, and you begin to see why yoga, meditation, and all these different aspects and the Kundalini energy all play into this beautiful dance of creation, and how to be able to play the game, if you know the rules.
Mm. Wow, brother. Yes. I love all that. Thank you for sharing. So much came up in that. As me as the director of this podcast, I will continue the format. Um, so yeah, we're living in a cosmic dream where this earth, this plane of existence is it's a heaven. This place is heaven. Like, and it's all about the state or the state of being that the fractals are inhabiting and are broadcasting out into this musical to then create this symphony of either incoherence or coherence based on if they're in living in natural law with the logos, the rules that the creator, the benevolent, divinely loving, intelligent creator has made up for his children. We are children of the one God. Right? Lest I was telling Jade yesterday, like that quote, lest we become children, we cannot enter the kingdom. I would love to hear your interpretation of becoming a child and returning to that innocent state of being and how that relates so far to what we've talking about.
Yeah.
Um, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. Well, when we think about a child, what is a child? A child is what does a child do, rather? A child is always in a state of play,
Mm,
play and imagination. So once you begin to approach life as a game of play, and you're having fun with it, and you're using your imagination and your creativity, well, now you just cracked all the codes. because it's essentially where the play comes into reality and where the imagination comes into reality is that you're becoming present. And when you're in a state of play, you're just worried about the present moment. You're not when you're playing, you're not thinking about anything happening ahead of you, anything happening behind you. You're in just a state of present awareness and you're playing. And then the imagination, the imagination, a lot of times when you say I'm daydreaming or I'm imagining, you're not in the present moment. Well, essentially what you're doing is that you're maintaining both states. You're maintaining this state of being completely present, completely aware, and at the same time, you're tapping into the neurosphere, you're tapping into the infinite realm of possibilities and probabilities, which we go back to maintaining the God consciousness and the physical personality, the physical self. So it's like you're dancing with these two. And isn't that what children are all about? They're just all about using their imagination, and they don't know anything, so they haven't had the rules, they haven't had the programming yet. They're very innocent. What is the essence of innocence? The essence of innocence is that you haven't got the program, you don't know any better. You're what we would call naive. You don't know what the world is. But it's not even naive, because naive, we say naive where these are the set rules and you don't know the rules. It's not even about that. It's actually they're the teachers, and they really have the essence, which there are no rules besides the foundation of the entire universe. And when you fall into this state of complete innocence, like you don't know, you're not like logically like this is the way it is. Meaning, if you're going to create your reality, you're not approaching it in a matter like it's going to happen just like this. I'm going to determine when it happens and how it happens. No, you're just in a state of imagination. Like, I have a feeling that this is going to take place, and you're innocent about it, right? Innocent before proven guilty. And you're just playing with it. You're in a state of play, of imagination. And that's where all the beauty comes from. That's the essence of all art and creativity is being present in your artwork, whether you're painting, whether you're playing a work of music, and at the same time, you're dancing with this creative unknown. Like for me, I come from, the hip hop era, hip hop culture, freestyle coming off the top. As you know, when you're freestyling, it is this dance of being completely present, and at the same time your imagination is completely open because you're pulling in from all the probabilities and possibilities, and you're maintaining both. And so when you're approaching reality and approaching his world as the child to enter the kingdom of heaven, is that you can literally turn earth into heaven on earth by being in a state of play, being in a state of imagination, and you're in a state of innocence because you don't know what's going to happen. So it's less about, knowing, like we talked about, we started this with knowledge and wisdom, right? And it's so funny. It's like you go to know, to know, to know. The more that you know, you're like, I want to find this out. I want to find this out. But if you just stay there, it cripples you. Is that you get to a point where the knowing is unknowing. The one that knows everything knows that he knows nothing at all. So and that's the child state, is that you're really allowing yourself to be in complete play, complete imagination, and you're what I'm finding out, and this is stuff that's just coming to me, is that what I'm finding out is that the routes of trying to know and the route of trying to figure it out will eventually, if you continue to follow, lead you to the place where you're not worried about trying to figure it out. Where where eventually you get to this part where it's like it's not really about knowing, because the same way how we were talking about, like, I want to know who's controlling the world. How do they control the world? How does this world work? How does all this work? And you're trying to figure all this stuff out, and then you eventually get to a place where you're like, oh wow, it's I've learned all these techniques and all this stuff, but it's really about just letting go and allowing yourself to go into this state of non-knowing, this state of receptivity. And that is what allows you to be in that dielectric, to be in that central node, that still point that allows all of the beauty that life has to offer you to take place. and it's all about the entering the kingdom of heaven as the child. You know, they have all the secrets.
Wow, bro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so a few things came up there. What a couple things that I'll share until our next topic is relating to that innocence of imagination. I remember being a kid, and before I knew or before I learned the teachings of how the mind creates reality, I naturally did it. And I remember looking at clouds in the sky. I don't know if anybody watching this resonates, but I would look at those beautiful clouds and I would make the most magical monsters and mythological creatures with just the shapes of the clouds. And I would create these stories. And as like my parents are driving down the highway, I'm looking up at the clouds, like creating this reality that I am experiencing. And this was like a natural thing. This was before, right? Like hearing about Neville Goddard's teachings or anything like that. So it shows you that this is our natural state of being in that playful, imaginative, almost like happy, like just that's what happiness is, right? Um, and then the stars, like even the same with the stars. I remember like looking at stars and making that wish to the first star that I saw in the sky. And I remember I still do it to this day because it was so ingrained in me as a kid. Like I always told myself, when you see that first star, like make that wish, make that positive affirmation of who you are. And like I was doing this as a kid, right? Like making positive affirmations towards my life. So that was a cool thing. And then I wanted to bring up how the ancient um the Vedic culture and like the Hinduism, they talk about like Leela and Maya. And so Leela is the play and then Maya is the illusion. But I got this code years ago and I'm like, wow, Leela and Maya are the same thing. They're both the imagination, but Leela is allowing the play to play without punishing the child for playing or for innocently doing something wrong. Maya is taking life seriously as the illusion, and seriousness is a sickness
Yeah.
of separation. I get that like it's good to be, I don't know if serious is the right word. It's good to be conscious and caring about your spiritual practice, but hey, you don't got to be serious about life. Like
Mhm.
if you really feel that you're an eternal being that goes on forever, then seriousness wouldn't be a thing. Death wouldn't be a problem, right?
Mhm.
Like, but that to be at that level of awareness to really feel that you are beyond just this incarnation and you carry everything with you. And I just want to share this thing real quick was because you're exciting me so much. The I had a dream last night and I was in a different body in the dream. I was actually a blonde woman. And I remember I looked left in the mirror and I saw the form of, oh, I'm in a blonde woman's body right now. And so I was connecting with other dream characters that were looking at me as like I'm this woman, but the key here is that I still felt my beingness never changed. And I
Mm.
told Jade this in the morning, like I remember feeling in the dream state as I was sleeping like I felt the same as I feel now. So your
Mhm.
beingness is totally separate than your physical form.
Yeah.
And you can actually feel if you go into that still point that we're talking about, that meditative state, you can feel the presence. And that is what we are. That is the field and that is the unknown. And that's where the ego dies.
Mhm.
So that's the problem for the ego because the ego can't exist in stillness and silence. And as great masters have said, like silence is the highest truth because silence is the only truth. It's the only reality. It's the only energy that then is lending its energy to the imagination or to our fractalized minds to then create with that energy. So that was really interesting, was feeling that same presence, that same beingness, but I created a woman's body and I was going about, and the characters were like, they were acting towards me as if I was a woman, but they couldn't see what's behind.
Mm.
And I think that's really key is to be with each other, knowing that like what's behind your eyes is that
Mhm.
same awareness that I am, and that is unity consciousness. That is realizing that we all hold that same essence of God within us, and that is how we should all be in relation to each other in this world, and that is how we will create beautiful worlds. And something else I wrote down before we move on is worlds are words. This is all made of language. And so we're gonna get into cymatics right here. But like this is all just words. Like in the beginning was the word, right?
Yep.
And I wanted to share one last thing, which so yeah, our attention is the gold. And the thing is that I don't know if everybody gets yet, especially if you're like just awakening and you're still putting your attention on like what's negative. That's what you're feeding, and that's what that force is like it wants that. It wants you to feed upon its negative charge. And if you're not aware enough to transcend that, which is something like obviously it's a daily thing and I have aspects of myself that I still have been feeding that negative charge with another negative charge and I haven't been able to balance it out with that positivity or just that deeper understanding, but that's something that I'm learning every day too and I'm growing every day. But so our attention and then to not to simultaneously not identify with anything,
Mhm.
which is like kind of where more I came from of like the non-duality teachings. It was like really pure non-identification.
Mhm.
But then now I'm like into these Neville teachings and Dr. Joe, and I had a big resistance to that when I knew about Dr. Joe years ago, but actually doing his daily meditations now and doing the work
Mhm.
now, um, I had a little bit of resistance because it felt like it was bringing me back into my mind, which was the problem. And so it's the mind is a big problem if you in the context of certain scenarios, but also the mind is a marvelous thing as we've been talking about. It's everything. So it's also like deepening your awareness and finding that balance in yourself to, control your flow, but also to like be pulled back and to like and that's that woo way, right? That effortless effort vibe.
Mhm.
But the last thing I'll share before I want you to talk about cymatics is Dr. Joe says something, the unknown is where the magic happens. And
Mhm.
that is so beautiful because everybody that I've studied and listened to the testimonials of people that heal doing this work
Mhm.
is they all went into the unknown and because they didn't have anything left. Like they were on their last days and Dr. Joe's like, man, just kind of do it. Like just let go. and get into the unknown. And the amount of coherence, like the intelligence is so loving. It immediately starts to heal you and rejuvenate you and repair you right when you get out of the analytical mind and you go into the unknown and you surrender. And it's exactly what all of the masters like, surrender to God.
Hmm.
That's in physics we could say, say that in so many ways, but the spirituality and the physics, like they're one and the same thing. It's just a different language that we use. And we shouldn't, like, I think a great teacher is being able to simplify these teachings and to deliver them, but then to also let the students know that, like, hey, you're already that. Like,
Hmm.
you're already what you've been looking for. And then to cut, like, to start from that 0 point of power, and then to create from there. So yeah, if you would want to talk about cymatics, based on, we're talking about language and words, would you be open to sharing a deep dive into cymatics?
Yeah, yeah. It's it's well, there's a big connection point with everything that you're talking about, and then how it, translates into the word, into cymatics. So if we think about the unknown, we can also think about like the ether, that which binds all of existence, right? And you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, but it exists. And think about sound and resonance. Again, going back to the tuning forks, on how there's no physical connection between them, but they can trigger each other to vibrate. And that vibration creates a tone. So when we look at the chakras, and this is all going to tie together with ether, with the cymatics, you have the crown, which is basically you thousand petal lotus, which is you looking up, seeing the lines of convergence, divergence of the torus fields. So that's the crown, which would you can connect with singularity. Then you go to the third eye point, which would be polarity, because third eye is a reconcile or reconciliation of the polarities, the two petal lotus coming together, one, right? The inner vision. And the two eyes, the polarity of the two eyes connecting with one. Well, the chakra that comes right after that is the throat chakra. And the element that's connected with the throat chakra is the ether element. And the sense, so each element has a sense that we experience. Five elements, five senses. And the sense that connects with the ether element is the sense of sound, of hearing. So when we talk about the throat chakra and how important it is about the words that you speak, and speaking words into reality, and speaking reality, and how cymatics is sound that creates reality, that creates the physical geometry that allows all the atoms to form molecules and to form the molecular structures that we know of as, the geometry of nature, of this physical world. Sound in the beginning was the word, and the word was God. So we can see how sound is the binding force that pulls together all of matter and is connected deeply with the ether, because the ether is the field. And so sound is like almost like striking the field and causing a vibration to occur. And the rate of how fast it's vibrating is going to determine its shape and its form. And this is similar to tones, is that when we look at, all the different octaves and all the different tones and chords that make up octaves, they're all about a rate of vibration. That the further you go down, the lower you go down, the slower the vibration, and it creates long waves. And then the higher that you go up in tones, the faster the vibration, creating short waves. So now you got long, low, and you got short, fast. So you got a spectrum that's happening, is given all these different tones, and all of the tones have a certain color or radiance that they're in sync with, right? And so now you're witnessing how, if you look at again the chakra system, and you have that throat, that sound, that current in speaking, saying incantations, which is the most one of the most powerful ways of creating your reality on what you say to yourself and what you speak into reality, that you can literally get rid of parasitic energies and entities and negative forces and curses, all these things, just by speaking them out of existence and claiming your authority by the words you speak. Well, that's your ether. And right after the chakra of the throat chakra, connected with the ether, connecting with sound, well, now you're going to move into the heart. And the heart is the element of air. And air connects with the element of touch. And touch is feeling form. So right after sound comes touch and form. And that's all with the heart. And what does the heart do? The heart is how you connect with the other. So the same way how we have resonance happening, we have the physical representation of that is coming into the heart and realizing that I and I, that the other person is you, and you connect that through the heart, and you can really feel that, right? So it's this interesting sense of feeling, because feeling, when we go into feeling, it's an energy that we feel, we can feel something, and then there's feeling of actually physically touching. So now we have a merging of the energy in the subtle realm and the physical representation of that. But in order to get there, you have to go through that throat, that sound. So you begin to see how it's like this aspect of, when we talk about cymatics and sound and form and all of the geometries, it's what's allowing us to experience the physical worlds. And when we go out into the physical world and we're touching it, right? When we touch this physical world, is that we're really coming to the sense of being able to experience reality. So that ties all again to, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and how sound is what's creating this physical world. And as you move down into the heart, you're moving down into the feeling of it. So now you can feel everything. And then this ties in, if you keep going down, it's going to connect all back to the ether and sound. But if you go move down from the heart, you get to the solar plexus, which connects with the element of fire, which connects with the element of sight. So now after you feel it, right, like a blind man, now you feel it, now you can see it. So now you're seeing your reality. And then as you move down, you go into the sacral, and now you're tasting. Is the sense of water element, tasting. And now you're able to taste this reality, eat fruits and eat foods, and wow, you're like experiencing this reality. And then you go down even further, you go down to the root, well, now this is connected with the sense of smell, an earth element. So now you're smelling, and the earth is survival. You can smell something like, oh, that's right, that's good for me. You can smell something, oh, that's putrid, that's not good for me. So you're seeing that there's all these elements that's taking place. But when you move up and you go into that densification of the earth, and as you become less dense, you become water, you're in the sacral, you become less dense, now you're in the heart, you're in I'm sorry, as you go from water, then you go into the solar plexus, which is fire, you're becoming less dense. Then you're increasing in your subtlety energy. So as you become less dense than water, then you go into the heart. You go after the heart, you go into the throat. And so the throat, connecting with sound, is the most subtle. So out of all the elements, if you imagine the elements, that it's a level of energy manifesting itself from the most subtle going down to the most gross. So if we go reverse, we have the ether, we're sound, we're speaking into reality as its energy becoming more dense. Now we're on a path of energy becoming form. So as it becomes more dense, it becomes air. As it becomes more dense, it becomes fire. As it becomes more dense, it's water. As it becomes the most dense, it's ether. I'm not sorry, it's earth. And so, but what you'll see here is you see ether, and then you see heart, and then you see earth. So earth is the bottom part, heart is the balance point, and ether is the top point. So now again, you got that trifactor happening, and all of this is going down into this whole essence of going back into the ether and the sound, and how cymatics and how you're bridging pure energy, pure potentiality, and you're allowing that to create form, to create densification. And if you notice that sound, again, with sound and resonance and vibration, it's the medium that bridges the most gross, the most physical world of the earth, and it bridges that with the ether, with the most subtle realm. And all of that is dancing and is balanced through the heart center. And that's why they're anagrams, EARTH, HEARTH, AE.
Mm.
AERTA. So you're seeing that you're like, wow, this is all the balance. And so that's where the whole like cymatics and using mantras, toning, chanting Om, chanting Ong, and you're creating these vibrations. And you're using again the cantations with what you're speaking into reality, how you speak to yourself. You're realizing that sound is the bridge of everything. It's the bridge between the most subtle, the most physical, and it's the reason why you have cymatics as the force that allows matter to create its form. So that's the essence of what I found cymatics is, and the whole essence of sound connecting with ether, and how it's being able to bridge again those polarities of those two opposing points.
Wow, amazing. Um, I want to ask about, you mentioned earlier like UFOs and levitation, and I had a thought like, oh, do you think we could fly? Do you think flying is a possibility? But yeah, there's a few avenues. I'm thinking we either go a little bit down that route of, if you want to share a little bit about like 0 point technology and like how maybe higher dimensional beings are utilizing this knowledge of the infinite free energy ether all
Yeah.
around us. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about like architecture
Mhm.
and sacred geometry and how important it is us as like these divine beings to be in like beautiful architectural homes and how that affects the resonance of the space and who we are as these sound beings. I think that would be cool to explore a little bit about like architecture. And then the last thing I maybe we'll talk a little bit about electroculture, just to give us a few topics, and then we can end off the podcast on. I just want to kind of hear about the greatest teachers, and then we can leave the audience with a lot to chew on for exploration. So yeah, maybe we'll start at the 0 point technology, um, in relation to how, like, maybe we could talk about Grebennikov a
Oh yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
if you want to drop in on that bit.
Yeah.
And then we'll go into the architecture from there. And obviously, like we could talk about Tartaria and like some of these ancient cathedrals. I would love to hear your interpretation of all of that. So yeah, let's continue.
I love it. I love it. So and this is a very good point on going from sound, going from ether, vibration, resonance, and then moving into levitation. Um, so when we talk about Grebennikov, and if anybody at the audience is not familiar, he was a natural scientist, and he came across, it was a particular beetle. I'm not sure if it was the scarab, but it was a particular beetle that he found actually levitated. He was doing some experiments, and then he found like the wings could actually levitate, and so he started doing all these experiments to figure out what it is. And what he discovered was that it was about resonance, is that that the wings are able to vibrate, and when they match the same resonance as the Schumann resonance, that is able to actually levitate. And this was the same understanding that Victor Schwaberger had, that this was really about a game of resonance and vibration. And so, if people aren't familiar, you had during World War II, you had Adolf Hitler, and he had what was known as the Foo Fighters. So during Nazi Germany, he had technology of UFO technology. They called the Foo Fighters, and these were UFOs that were able to go left and right and go all these different directions. Some people are like, "Yo, aliens gave them the technology," but when you actually do some hardcore research, you find out Victor Schwaberger was actually recruited, and he's the one that helped them to develop the Foo Fighters. because he understood electricity and magnetism. He understood the dance between electricity and magnetism. And what does a magnet do? A magnet is the only thing that we can see in actual reality that can levitate. If we take two magnets and we can see, well, wow, they could actually levitate. It's the only way we can experience it, right? And so, he discovered that when you have the dance of electricity and magnetism, when you create devices that the output that they are creating is more magnetic dominant, that you can create levitation, that you're manipulating high pressure and low pressure, right? Because again, high pressure and low pressure are the physics of the torus fields. And as you're able to mediate between high pressure and low pressure, you can create levitation. And between going back to the guitar string, you have high pressure, low pressure, alpha, omega, and yin and yang, and a spectrum between the two, which is creating the vibration. And when you hit the sweet spot of the vibration, the way that you hit the sweet spot of a tone to get the vibration, to get the resonance, you're doing the same thing with the Schumann resonance. And so this is when we talked about the human body and pushing against gravity, you're doing the same thing, that you have the elasticity that holds together the physical realm, and you're able to manipulate between electricity, magnetism, and you can affect gravity. And so this is how bees fly. Like bees are able to fly because they match the resonance. The rate of the vibrating of the wings is how bees are able to fly. How a hummingbird can go left and right, up and down. It's all about the speed. You know how fast that they can flip those freaking wings of theirs? Well, they're anti-gravity. That's what they're working with. And it's not, again, not woo-woo, it's just understanding vibration and resonance. So these people were understanding that, and there was this deep connection. What I found is that, back in the day, I used to be hardcore, like, I used to be deep in the Palladians and the Arcturians, and like all that, and studying like UFOs. And anytime you go into that culture, what you always find is that there seems to be a connection between like technology and consciousness. That you're reaching a certain level of consciousness, and then you could begin to operate or understand how this technology operates or how it works. 0 point consciousness, 0 point technology. We talk about the dielectric and going into the still point, right? Going into stillness, going into your center. And it's the same thing with electricity and magnetism, is that they're realizing when you're that, if you imagine that center point, like the sweet spot of the tonality of the vibration that you want to reach, that all of a sudden you can reverse, or you could go against the high pressure and low pressure, and then you can create levitation. And this is probably how you had yogis out in the Himalayas who were able to, like, levitate. There's a lot of scam that goes along with that too, so it convolutes the mind. You're like, yo, are they scamming me, are they not? But when you really break down the physics, that these are higher essences. Like if you talk about like the Vamanas in ancient India, in their descriptions, and you have to take the Vedas serious if you take science serious. Because if you look at Oppenheimer and you look at any major scientist that had any discovery with atoms and protons, electrons, neutrons, all that stuff, they were all did the Vedas.
Well,
Like Oppenheimer
in
was
the
fluent.
book, the
Mhm.
Mahabharata, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the weapon.
Yeah.
The weapon
Yep.
that was used in that battle was, in a sense, like the Oppenheimer, like related to like a nuclear bomb,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically. And that even with the Gita, like I used to read the Gita all the time.
Hmm.
It's like I love that book, and I'm actually gonna get a copy and start reading it again because it's so related to like the Bhagavad Gita is now
Yeah.
like the war that's like the war on consciousness that's going on now. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah, like I remember that relation
Yeah.
with the Vedas.
Hmm.
Crazy.
It's wild. So you see, and then if you go into like, can a person levitate? Can a person fly? They got this one dude. This I don't know where he's from, Eastern European guy, and he's like he's saying, yo, they have videos of him levitating. He's like, I could teach you to levitate and stuff. And what I personally, this is all based on belief. This is not based on I know any fact, like this is the way it works. But from my understanding, there's a dance of belief. There's a dance of what you believe is possible, and in the neurosphere what the collective believes is possible. So it's kind of like an iceberg, you know? It's like, can you fly? Well, I mean, you've experienced not being able to fly your entire fucking life. So it's like you got like a, you know, a little iceberg tip that's above the water. Like, I believe I can, but then the bottom part is like, nah, you can't do this. It's kind of like the same thing where I look at it like being a breatharian, you know, that possibly back in the day we were able to live and just off breath, just off the ether. And maybe there's a collective resonance of who knows back in the day if people were flying and levitating and stuff like that. But when we talk about the technology could be a gateway. It could be a bridging the gap of seeing like, wow, we can actually build devices and that create levitation. Because for me, it's like when I look back and you look at like Atlantis, it was all about technology, but the consciousness didn't match the technology. And Victor Schwaberger talks about this, how he says that's what created the deluge. He says that we mastered centripetal flow, but we didn't know how to shut it off. And then it created this schism. So maybe that's why there's this connection between your level of consciousness and the technology that can be produced. So that's what I keep finding is that because when I started looking at Walter Russell's work, and then I looked at Victor Schwaberger's work, and I put those two together, there's so many keys. There's so many keys that they're talking about like the exact same thing, but from different angles. And Walter Russell, he's talking about the sciences like the periodic table of elements, and he lays all that down, and that ties into transmutation, into alchemy. And Victor Schwaberger, he's talking about the dance of electricity, of magnetism, centrifugal spin, which is like winding clockwise towards the center, the field of energy. And when the energy unwinds, it's what you call centrifugal. It's like matter going from its condensed state and then breaking apart and then going from its individualist state and coming back together. And that is connected with God consciousness just being one self where everything is connected and then splitting itself apart into all these infinite singularities of people, places, and things. And then everyone dies, it goes back to God and then goes back to people and back to God. They're finding the same things happening with the periodic table of elements and the structure of reality. That it's all about all these periodic table of elements that are all quote unquote separate. And then they could come together to condense the form zinc, cobalt, lead, and all these different forms. And but then the same way how it can come together, let's say to create wood or a tree, but then when you burn that and you have ash, well, all you're left with is the separated periodic table of elements that are in their separate form. So you begin to see that there's this deep connection between consciousness and matter, between technology, which would be the expression of the consciousness, and I think that the reason why levitation seems to be a medium between these is because it's working again with that elasticity that holds together the universe and then define it, define quote unquote gravity by unwinding it and doing that through the willpower and through synchronization of like mind, what you think about, how you feel about it, how you act about it, that creates the resonance, that creates a carrier wave that is at its strongest amplitude. So that's tying that together. Amplitude waves. I think that's a good part to
That's
to
me, bro. I
transition
love all
on that.
that. I love all that. Yeah, I too had years of like being in that space of like the cosmic consciousness of like connecting with the alien energy and like listening to like so much David Wilcox, and shout out David Wilcox for like putting me on like pyramid energy,
Mm,
0 point energy, like the source field investigations is a classic. And
yeah.
like that book is amazing. Like, um, but on my travels, like I gotta leave some books behind and then bring some home. Like I have a little bookshelf that's developing here, but it's still just the ones that I'm actually like focusing on. Um, but yeah, so much came up there. maybe we could talk about like Ormus in relation to like the pyramids, and maybe we could go back a few thousand years into like Egypt. And
Mhm.
like like what a cool thing to know that there's pyramids everywhere. And for me, that's a sign that the beings were unified and like understanding like cycles of time and learning. There's this book called The Law of One, which is a very interesting text.
Mhm.
It's claimed that it's channeled from Ra, which is a social memory complex, which basically just means that as you ascend your consciousness, you and I would merge, and I would then have your memories, and we would as we go from what the Law of One refers to as like the third density consciousness, the solar plexus, coming into the heart and coming into this new earth, this like fourth density frequency. And we talk about like 4D and 5D, but like it's kind of one. It's coming out of the illusion that I, Stephen, is separate from you and that you are my brother, and like in the actual literal sense of brothers of the same God. And so what I do to you, I'm doing to myself, like literally. And what I think is possibly affecting you because we're sharing this one mind. And it gets really subtle, like in it does, like it we overlook. I think it's a great responsibility to have an awakened consciousness and to now utilize like it for the good, for what the law of one will term like the positive polarity. And that's something I wanted to bring up with you is like just those polarities, how embedded in the structure of reality is polarity. And it's, yes, there's this unified field that's animating it, but
Mhm.
polarity is of divinity. And it's like it's more about integration of those opposites. And
Yeah.
and that's really what like shadow work is about, right? Like bringing the darkness to the light, but loving it and,
Yeah.
and nurturing it rather than like fighting something. Like that's not the way of the positive polarity. The positive polarity, it's honors free will, it's pulled back, it's detached, it's unconditionally loving. And it's like, wow, like to be living in that state is being like we are gods, like
Yeah.
that, right? Like we are literally gods made manifest. And but to then I just wanted to reflect, like, as you said with Atlantis, like having that humility when like as you gain that awareness, like you simultaneously have to be like humbled to the
Mhm.
Father and to the Mother and to pray and to like as you gain this gift of wisdom, it's a sign like I wrote the other week, like if life isn't humbling you, you're not living it right.
Mm.
And that's genuinely like what I feel like we should be like the real state of like it is humility, and that's why like even if you develop all of these supernatural powers, you can still use it for what people might think is like positive, but I think there's really simple rules that we could break down, which is like love thy neighbor
Mhm.
as thyself.
Mhm.
And that's like the law is love. So anytime you're acting out of love, you're violating the law. And
Yeah.
and therefore, like that's what karma is. Karma isn't a negative thing. It's just it's a feedback loop to show you what you're still believing in. So in a sense, karma is the greatest gift. If
Mhm.
karma is a catalyst, if you choose to utilize it from that context of alchemy and of transcendence, but that takes like a certain level of consciousness. So I I would want to talk to you about because the law of one talks a lot about like it sparks off on the pyramids. What
Mhm.
is your understanding of the Earth like, I don't know, a couple thousand years ago when these things were like activated, and what
Yeah.
does an activated pyramid do? And like, man, like I want so badly for us to return to that state of like all beings are just living in harmony. There's no hierarchy, and pyramids are activated. We're connected with the Galactic Federation. Like that is that's real. And it's like, how do we, and even as I say that, there's still some doubt in me that like, oh, like that's real. Like I feel in my heart that it's real, that we are able to like telepathically connect and be in this like magical existence together. So yeah, what do you feel based on just what you've researched and also what you feel in your heart about the earth in that time, and how can we return to that? And are we at that place of the return?
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I love where this is going. So, what I find is that everything again goes back to polarity, and polarity allows for oscillation, right? For the energy to move from one side to the other. And the oscillation gives us the vibration, the rate of the vibration gives us the frequency gives us the form. You have the earth, and then within the earth, if you go back to Egypt, you find this deep connection between Egypt and Greece, and then it was Egypt, Greece, Rome, and you have all these different aspects because you have like Christ with Rome, and then the Roman Empire, and then you have the pyramids, the Egypt, and then you have Pythagoras, and everything that they talked about in Greece. And one of the things you find is the platonic solids. So you got all the platonic solids, and all those are contained within the sphere, and that you had all these technologies that were all over the planet, and most of them that you pointed out, pyramids. And so the pyramid, the true essence of the pyramid is not just what we see above ground, but is that dual pyramid underground, that Merkaba, that lower triangle and that upper triangle coming to merge in the heart space. You're merging those polarities. But what do we always notice about geometry if we look at all the platonic solids and we look at the pyramids? It's all about the angle, right? And so this is going to go into the geometry, the physics of Tartaria, and how this energy flows. So to make it as simple as possible, we got singularity, which is the one consciousness that splits itself into polarity. So remember when we were talking about magnetism and north and south pole attraction and repulsion, when they get uneven, it allows that current to flow. Well, just imagine that unevenness as an angle. If you look at all the pyramids and going into Orgonite, we know when we have 52, 54 degrees, 72 degrees, when we hit certain particular angles, that allows energy to flow. So imagine if you have a table that's just flat and there's water on the table. As soon as you tip it, that water is going to flow. This is what you call the dielectric plane. So energy is always constantly moving, but when you utilize specific angles, you're allowing the energy to be directed to a certain place. So a pyramid, you have all those sides and all that energy is being focused and pulling in towards that top, towards that singularity. And so the pyramids and all the technology, all the geometry is that when you create fractal geometry, as above, so below, and you're using specific angles and specific measurements that are symmetrical, geometric, and balanced, you're creating what you call like wave guides or wave guide resonators. So when you have these cathedrals and you're hitting these tones and playing these organs, like the organs in your body, when you're hitting these certain tones and frequencies, you're creating a resonant chamber that allows all of the vibration to consolidate, to create this eternal amplitude that can go on infinite from micro all the way to macro. So now you got a fractalized bridge from creator to creation. And so that's why the pyramids and all these centers for healing, and that's why sound is deeply connected with the pyramids. You go into certain chambers and you hit certain vocal notes that you're creating these different tones, and it's working with the tone. The vibration matches the measurements of the building that you're inside of. So if you look at waves, and a wave being a long wave or a short wave, we're talking about the measurements of waves. So when the measurement of the wave from its ebb, its flow, from its crest down to its to the dip, when you measure that and that matches that measurement of the geometric structure, well, now you got a resonant chamber that's allowing all the molecules and the atoms that make up your physical body to harmonize and to go into a coherent state. And that allows the mind, the body, the soul to go into a coherent state. So that's why all these technologies, the pyramids, and they always use these shapes no matter what the culture was all over the world, because this is a deep science that was known by all of them. Now, but when you go back, what you also find is that darkness is always there with light. That it seems to be never a place or a time where it's just all light, it's just all beauty,
Right.
because you need the oscillation and you need the polarity.
Right.
So the same way how we have a shadow self, we got a shadow government, right? We
Right.
we got there's darkness that's on the planet and there's light on the planet, and this brings up the conundrum: if God created all this universe, why did he create all this darkness and stuff like that? And essentially, what I found, this is just from my perspective, what I found is that this polarity is what, again, going to high pressure, low pressure. It goes into the function of the torus field. It goes into the function of the way that we can experience the multitude of realities, like you're saying, third density, fourth density. It's a rate of vibration, right? That we're going from a third dimension to a fourth dimension, which is a reconciliation of the dark and the light. And this goes down into the physics of love thy neighbor. This goes into the physics of love thy enemy. One brother I'm sure you're familiar with, Organite Austin. You ever see that YouTube channel back in the day? Black Sun, Organite, all that.
These are
And
classics.
Dowen Gardner, I think is the brother's name. So he said something that I really loved, is talking about chemtrails. And he's like, you know how you defeat the chemtrail? He's like, I realize that you don't even need the organite. You
Uh,
can defeat a chemtrail just by looking at it and giving it love,
wow.
radiating love to the chemtrail. And it blows the mind, because what you if you start to really look at it, you start to realize that there's certain themes that continue to pop up. If you look at this talk and look at what we're talking about. So what you are doing is you're meeting logic and you're creating a resistance against logic. You are defying, quote unquote, what you think would be logical. Like, why would I send love to an enemy? Why would I send love to the chemtrail and the spray in the sky? You're defying the logic, the same way how you defy gravity with levitation, the same way how you defy the snapping together of the universe and you're pushing against it, or you define the gravity with the root chakra, squeezing, creating that piezoelectricity and pushing the energy up when it naturally wants to go down.
Mm.
So you're really realizing that this is the whole essence, where you need the rainy days to experience the joy. That really we're in a time right now where we are in heaven on earth, as you say all the time, new earth now. That we actually are in the new earth, and that it's more about a resonance and a state of resonance and realizing that ultimate truth. In the same way how the pyramids have the angles, our body has the angles. We got the triangles all over. We got the third eye that goes to the eyes. That's our triangle right there. And then from the corners of the eyes down to the mouth, or to the nose, and from the nose to the corners of the mouth. And you keep seeing these triangles all over the body and how all the energy flows. So, exactly. Yep. So it's the human Merkaba, and that it's this dance of, like we said before, of approaching this child state, this energy. And it's also balancing the light and the dark, because sometimes you have to pull out that warrior. Sometimes you got to get ferocious. You got to tap into that lion energy, and it's because it's nature. Like, nature's harsh. You know what I mean? Watch the Nature Channel. You're gonna see some harshness go on. It's not all fun and fun and games. And so you see, you're like, all right, yeah, this is really about this beautiful dance and this balance that's taking place. And and it's this dance of using the intuition to defy logic, to say, if we talk about manifesting reality, science will tells us, like no, like what's outside of you that you cannot see is always there, no matter what, and you can't change it. And there's no such thing as like synchronicity, and of walking and ending up in a store that does tile, and all of a sudden what you were thinking about comes to real. But when you go into that heart space and you merge those two triangles and you merge the logic with the intuition, they're taking two polarities that are polar opposites and you're bringing them together. You're defying them. You're defying both of those polarities. You're defying negative polarity and positive polarity, and you're bringing them together. And this is again, that ties into how we're talking about oscillation, vibration, resonance, and resonance, which pulls together the entire physical universe. So essentially, we're just reverse engineering, and this is what a lot of the understandings of of these ancient cultures. What I found in my personal studies, this is what they were hinting at. And this is what I find that all the teachers are talking about, whether we go to the super scientific guys like John Keeley, Walter Russell, Victor Schwarberger, Grubrinikov, we go to those guys, or we go to like Krishna and Christ and Buddha, and we go to all these different people. It's like you keep finding the same thing, just said in multitude of different ways. And exactly, Yogananda. So they're all talking about the same thing, and then it puts you in a beautiful place because you don't have to be in fear. You could have an understanding. You're like, all right, yeah, I need the oscillation because I need the sweet and the sour, to experience them, and that's why like the bitter herbs are what heals us, and the sugar and the sweetness sometimes is not the best.
Wow.
So
Damn, bro. Um, what else we got on the menu? Let's tap into electroculture um real quick. Let's hear a little bit about electroculture, and then I also want you to share a little bit about Tesla and like what he was here for. Um, and then maybe we can kind of see our time there, and then we can leave it for episode 3. So
yeah,
let's hear a little bit about electroculture and Nikola Tesla and like what exactly is going on here.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I'm still learning every day, eh? It's like I'm just a child like playing with the tools as well, and I know in my heart that I want to be just as much of a loving being as I can be, and act out truth and kindness and embody those teachings of Christ. And that's what's most important to me. And obviously the tech comes after, but I love to see people, as you said, like these are portals, literal portals of a tool to remind us of what we have already, being an immediate creation of this infinite intelligence. So, yeah, let's hear a little about Tesla and electroculture, and then maybe we can close it off.
yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah. So electric culture. Now, electric culture just totally pulled me because, you know, I remember when I grew my first plant, and it was like the most fascinating thing in the world to me. The first thing I ever grew was cannabis, and I grew a plant, and I'm seeing it from seed becoming a sprout, and the whole process, and this just blew my freaking mind. Um, like how the heck does nature do it? I used to just sit and water my plants, and then just watch them for hours. I would be in my closet and just watching the plants and watching them flicker their leaves when they get the water in there. It's like, what the heck is going on here? And so that was like the root where I had a fascination. I had such a fascination with earth and all this in nature and how this stuff works. And then through life, electromagnetism is what always pulled me. I always wanted to understand the physics of the universe, how this stuff works, and that through synchronicity led me to understanding electricity and magnetism. So then I hear about electroculture. I'm like, yo, what? Like, use electricity to grow plants. I'm like, this makes sense. So then, of course, what I do is I like, let me study, let me figure out what the hell's going on here. And my mind just gets blown wide open. You come to realize again that electricity is what holds together all the periodic table of elements. That charge, electrical charge, is what powers life. So when we look at the plants and we look at how a plant grows, it has roots that are going down into the earth and then it's stretching up. Again, we're like defying gravity, right? Stretching up towards the sun, going into the earth. Those roots, when they go into earth, what does that plant need? Well, the plant needs, it needs all its nitrogen, it's potassium, calcium, magnesium. It needs all these different elements in order to process. You come to find out that what plants do is that they, through their root protoplasm, they shoot out protons that have a positive charge. Those protons then go through the soil and they attract the negative charged elements, right? So now they're attracting those negative charged elements just like little tiny magnets, and they pull them into the plant. And then what the plant does, it uses electroosmosis, where it uses the electrical charge and the structure of the water, again, defying gravity, to bring it up to all the extremities. So if you ever wonder how like a redwood tree is able to bring the nutrients all the way up against gravity, is using electricity to do that. It's using those polar opposites, piezoelectricity, and it's using that plus the field of magnetism that's around it to work with attraction and repulsion to move all those elements at all the different areas of the plant. When we talk about making an antenna, and we're creating a coil, we're working with a lot more. This is where electroculture, we call it electroculture, but it's dealing with scalar and it's dealing with magnetism. A lot of old school electroculturists, they don't really realize this. They focus solely on electricity, and they go into like from an electrical engineer perspective, like, oh no, you can't take the coil and it has to be separated in order for it to work and all that. And what they're not really realizing is anytime that you create a coil, and specifically the amount of coils that you're doing, you're automatically creating waveguides that's pulling scalar energy, right? So you're the same way how you create that angle and it allows that energy to flow, that's what you're dealing with. So with electroculture, what you're working with is essentially what is life? Life is a pulsation, a pulse, and life is breathing, in breathing, out breathing, compression, expansion. The soil, if you have soil that is locked, like locked soil, the nutrients are locked. That means that those electrons, those protons, all those charges of all those elements that plant needs, they can't go anywhere because there's no flux, there's no charge that's in the ground that's causing that stimulation to occur. And what is that stimulation? What is that occurrence? It's vibrations. But what are vibrations? Vibrations are waves. And what are waves? Waves, the rate of a wave, a frequency, is really about a rhythm. And what is the mother of all rhythms on planet Earth? The Schumann resonance, right? You come to realize a tree is not working with electrical engineering, but as Philip Callahan discovered, trees are antennas for the Schumann resonance. And their antennas, tying this all to Victor Schwaberger, where Schwaberger talks about back in the day when we used to have all the old growth forests, that it was so electrically conductive, the air was so electrically conductive that could see purple sparks flying off of the needles,
Wow.
the pine trees, and of the branches.
Wow.
And that's what you would call the point effect. So we got the pyramid that goes to the point, and that's where the discharge is happening. So essentially, when you're working with electroculture and you're working with these antennas, you're bridging that gap between Father Sky and Mother Earth. You're allowing those antennas to be waveguides that's allowing the Schumann resonance to then be amplified. Again, with Philip Callahan, he discovered he discovered how to use paramagnetism. He's not the person that discovered paramagnetism, but he discovered the use of paramagnetism and its function. And so if you look at magnetism, it could be broken down as the paramagnetic and diamagnetic, which is the masculine and feminine of magnetism.
Okay.
That if you have the north and south pole, if you split them up, they become monopoles. So the south pole is connected to paramagnetism, the north pole is connected to diamagnetism. And these different magnetisms are either weakly attracting or weakly repelling, which that attraction, that repulsion is creating a flux, an in-breathing and out-breathing. So back in the day, we used to have all these trees that were in tennis, large trees that were in tennis. We had soil that was highly paramagnetic soil. It had a high carbon content in it. And so it can breathe. The plants are diamagnetic, the soil paramagnetic. So you got masculine and feminine that would allow a flux to take place. And that flux, when it's in its balanced state, it becomes a tuning resonant fork for the Schumann resonance. And the Schumann resonance is what controls all of the rhythms of all of the plants and their biology. And they're all working together. So electroculture is so much more than just electricity. We're dealing with the field of magnetism, we're dealing with the electrical charge of the elements, and then we're dealing with the scalar field that binds it all together. And again, that's creating a holy trinity effect. And so what we're doing, a lot of things that I don't hear a lot of people speak about electroculture, is the true essence and the reason why soil is the crown of the entire thing. It's because the soil holds the magnetism of the earth. The magnetism of the earth is the field. The field is the information. The information contains everything of all the species and all the elements. It contains all the codes, the blueprint of the earth. So as we depleted the soil and as we cut down the trees, what we did is that we affected the information that the earth has access to. So when we restore the soil, it's not just allowing just to restore the soil, we're restoring the information, the original blueprint of earth.
The
And so
info in the ether?
and so the in the soil is
Yeah.
the ether is the binding
Right,
force,
right, right.
right? So the magnetism is the fields within the ether.
The
The
magnet
magnetism
is the
is the
field. Okay.
field. Yep.
Okay. Got it, got
So
it.
that's the field that is it's that you can look at magnetism like look at the ether as a lake
Yeah.
and you're throwing the rock into the lake and it's creating the ripples.
Ripple.
The
Yeah,
ripples
yeah.
is magnetism. It's what's contained within the ether.
Right. We're literally the scalar field is a sea of infinite energy.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And that's why it's connected with the longitudinal wave, where it's not about like a transverse wave, is not about going from point A to point B. It's quantumly entangled. It's all instantaneous, all at once.
And but that's reality though.
Yeah.
Like no, people haven't been living in reality. Like
Mhm.
the Newtonian model of like cause and effect, like it's just not actually how things are.
Yeah.
Literally. Like it's quantum reality is the truth that we're
Yep.
all one being connected, and what I'm thinking here could be affecting, somebody up in, or a plant, like all those studies with like the plants knowing when you're coming home. Bro, like it's amazing that it's that interconnected. It's like so interconnected. It's beyond what
Yeah.
the analytical mind would even know. That's
Yep.
cool.
Yep. And so it's you find out that that's really what this is, tying back to everything that we talked about, where we were saying resonance is like the
Right.
key to it all. And you have the Schumann resonance, is that it's the heartbeat of the earth. In the same way how we talk about the heartbeat is the balance point in the human body. So, in the heart, the ether, and the earth. So what electroculture essentially is doing is allowing the earth to come back to its original resonance. Because when we have all these Wi-Fi, all these different frequencies, when we have depleted soil and the trees are chopped down, we're messing with the ability of the Schumann resonance to be strong, to be coherent, to have as deep of an effect that it would when all these are in place.
Right.
So when you do an electroculture, you're helping to restore all of the energy, the integrity of the energy of the planet. and it's like Rupert Sheldrake, which he discovered the what he calls the morphic fields, is the field of information that dictates the geometry of the body, how it works, and that's over a plant that dictates the geometry of a flower or a pine cone and all this, that it holds the information. So when
A
you
light
bring
body. It's like its
yeah.
own light body.
Yep, it's like the light body. And so when you restore and you're using all these different elements to restore the electrical conductivity of the soil, you're allowing it to flux, you're allowing it to breathe, and you're able to, restore that intelligence. It's mind-blowing. And this is very similar to what Tesla was talking about when he's talking about the earth hums like a bell, and he talks about using longitudinal waves and scalar and 369, which 369 is what John Keeley discovered: electricity, magnetism, and gravity.
Wow.
And if you really want to know, Tesla just tells you, if you want to know about the secrets of the universe, know about 369. Well, if
Right.
you want to know about 369, study John Keeley.
John Keegan.
That'll be the guy that takes you home with 369.
Okay, got it, got it. Wow, bro. Okay. Yeah, let's we'll get an episode 3 going
Yeah.
sometime soon. We've been going for a couple hours here. So let's end off. First of all, if you're still tuned into this, we love you and appreciate you. And we hope that this gives you something to chew on in your consciousness and expands the horizons of love, coherence, resonance, reality, unity, all of the good stuff. Um, Bro, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your being with the Moona's community. This community is your community. We are all one community. And on that note, let's share where we can find you. And then we can drop a little bit of hints about our co-creations that are going to be coming up in the future. So let me know what is okay. He's gone. It's okay. He's gone. I'm still here though. We'll see if he comes back. But on that note, I can share. So New Atlantis's Instagram is New Atlantis, NU Atlantis. Uh, Basically, if you go there, and then the website is here. I'll call him, and then we'll get him to share it over the phone here. He's got a website which is nuatlantis.com, I believe. Let me just check that. Yeah, I mean, he's got a whole ebook. Um, Probably his phone died. So, anyways, there's tons of information. There's the Earth School that is activated, and I'm going to be teaching Tensor and other things potentially on the Earth School. So tune in for that. You can go to his shop. You can get organite, beautiful creations that he makes, beautiful pendants. He's got master classes, biofield mastery program. This is the real deal right here. There's Ormus available through him. And I would suggest, just if you have Instagram, go on that thing and expand your mind through what he is sharing. It's pure, pure gold. Um, so yeah, I'll give it a moment here. If he doesn't go on, then you've got the info. Um, Let me see here. I'll call. Looks like he saw it. Hey, yo, peace, brother. Were you able to hop back in here? So,
My phone totally
okay, let's fractal this out. So just share with the community right here what you
Yeah,
got.
let's do this. Let's do this. So yeah, yo, you can find me New Atlantis. So that's NU Atlantis on Instagram. And yeah, that's like the biggest channel. I'm on Facebook as well. I got a little bit of TikTok going, but yeah, New Atlantis is where you can find me at. And then we're building out the New Atlantis Earth School where we're going to be studying all this stuff and going into the physics. Moonis is going to be on there. He's going to be one of your guys. He's going to have his tensor courses on there. We're going to be developing the tech and then developing the inner tech in your body, your consciousness. And yeah, so follow me on IG. And you know, we're just going to take this thing to the moon, you know, and you'll be updated on the university, the New Atlantis Earth School. And it's a pleasure. I can't, you know, thank you enough, Moona, for having me on and joining with the tribe. This is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, much love to this brother. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and yeah, tune in with us. You can literally text me. Like I am so available to you in any way. There's courses out. You can learn all about Tensor. If you go to the YouTube channel, it's activation station. It's all there for you. Like how to make everything that is in the Moona shop. There's tons of information. There's now teachings. There's music. You know, there's so much that we co-create together. So leaving you in the love and in the light. We have a new Earth coming soon. So stay tuned and thank you. Peace, peace.
Much love.
Pew.